my name's Andy Tidy and welcome back to another edition of Canal Hunter. This is Series 5 of Canal Hunter, and for those of you who've been watching regularly, you will know that this particular series is being made in the third UK lockdown of the coronavirus epidemic. It's being made in February 2021. Therefore, we can't get out into the field, so we're making this series based on archive material. In this series, we're following the line of a canal which never quite happened. The BCN had proposed building an inclined plane route which avoided having to use all the locks at Walsall and at Ryders Green. It's a route which would have saved time, it would have saved money, and it would have saved water. But in the end, for a number of reasons, it never actually happened. But it would have covered a lot of lost canals. So we're using the time we have available during the coronavirus lockdown to explore what the route would have looked like, and also to take another look at some of those lost canals which ran down into it. We've spent our night near Broadwaters, and so we wake up to a modernish kind of strip of canal opposite what was the Monway branch. It's little to be seen of the old Monway branch. It was a privately owned T-shaped branch canal which served the paint and shaft works. Now, each of these episodes seems to enter an area which encapsulates another insight into how the canal infrastructure of the Black Country integrated with its surrounding industries. And this week we're going to pause at Ocker Hill. It's a lovely name, isn't it? And there's quite a lot of debate around how it got its name, but the consensus seems to be that it was the colour of the water that emerged from the Ocker Bonk. Well, actually that's Black Country speak for the Ocker Bank. A hill that reaches out from the Tipton area onto the Walsall Canal and therefore forms a very steep piece of ground. But for boaters, the name is better known for its association with the word greasy. The Greasy Ockers. It's a derogatory name that's bandied around in the boating community. And it is believed to relate to this area, but this time it relates to the Fellows Morton steamer crews who were based at Ocker Hill. And if you're wondering why this epithet was given to the operators of the steamboats, take a look at the boiler crew of the Steamboat President when you next happen to go down to the Black Country Museum on a hot summer's day. Need I say more? Now we're going to power on, and there's a lot more to Ocker Hill than just a rather funny name. The canals of the region played a key role in the delivery of electricity at a time when the power was both manufactured and consumed within quite tight geographical areas. And as has been patently obvious from the episodes to date, the most effective way of carrying large volumes of heavy coal from the collieries to the furnaces was by canal boat. The Ocker Hill Power Station, along with the one at Reedswood, which we passed further back, are excellent examples of how interdependent the canals and the power industries were. Now, we are blessed to have a huge number of photos of the old Ocker Hill Power Station, along with its cooling towers, which formed an enduring landmark in the area for most of the 20th century. Coal was towed in open day boats, some call them joeys, and they were then moored up at the power station awaiting use. The practice of hand emptying these coal boats disappeared with the introduction of mechanical grabs. So here around the power stations you find all the surviving photos cover narrowboats moored up in ranks and being discharged with these big steam grabs and loaded onto conveyor belts, which then moved the coal across to where it was needed at the furnaces. But the canal's role in the power supply network of the area didn't stop with the delivery of fuel. In addition to this transport function, it also offered a ready source of cooling water. And for an area which has no surface water and no rivers, that was pretty important. This application generated an additional revenue stream for the BCN, and one which saw very little water loss because the water was pumped in, used for cooling, and then dropped back into the canal, albeit at a slightly higher temperature. Ocker Hill Power Station was built on a big 14-acre site right next to a colliery, and it went on stream in 1902, supplying broad swathes of the Black Country within, I don't know, a 7 or 8 mile radius. But as with everything else, its success was undermined by the undermining of the land, which kept collapsing. The problem here was that the power supply cables leading out from the power station kept sagging down into the old workings and snapping. And so the local solution was every 200 yards of a supply cable was to build a loop pit, which actually did exactly what it says on the tin. Into the loop pits they put in 6 yards of extra cable. So as the land sagged and dropped, so the cable in the loops could be gently pulled out and the power supply wouldn't be interrupted. This plant was extended repeatedly as demand for power in the region grew, and it ended up with 3 cooling towers, and for many years this was regarded as one of the most thermally efficient and effective reliable sites in the country. But in the end the canal wasn't able to keep up with the supply of coal, nor could it compete with the adjoining rail link. But trade for the steam coal continued all the way through until 1960, when the Cannock coalfield was exhausted. So then coal gave way to gas turbines, which ironically were actually more expensive to operate than coal. But they did have this great advantage that a gas turbine could be turned on at the flick of a switch, whereas the coal-fired power stations had to be brought into steam and then maintained. So the coal-fired plant was closed down in the early 1970s, along with many of these smaller power stations. The gas side continued on until 1996, but those old distinctive cooling towers, they were demolished back in 1985. Well, that's Ocker Hill Power Station for you, but right next door to it there was another major consumer of coal. I mentioned in the previous episodes that there were 5 distinct flights of locks dropping down into the Walsall Canal, and they all brought water with them, and they all drained water from the higher pounds. This was a problem for the BCN because they couldn't afford to waste the water. So to address this, the BCN built a massive central pumping station at the south end of Ocker Hill. And in doing so, it created a bit of a conundrum which has baffled a lot of canal historians as they attempt to get to grips with the intricacies of the area. I've got to admit I was caught out on this one. You see, if you look from the top, you can find the old straight Ocker Hill branch coming down the Ocker Bonk and ending up at a pumping station. And then there is the lower Ocker Hill branch coming in underneath. And it would appear to be a continuous canal, but there is no sign of any locks. Well, the truth is there was no navigable link between the 2 sections of the Ocker Hill. It was simply a pumping station which drew water in from the Walsall level and pumped it up to the top. It usually used 3 big steam pumping engines, but there were 2 in reserve, so in needs be it could run on 5. And it's said that when those pumping engines were running at full chat, the flow into them was so great that you couldn't draw a working boat against it. So boats that were near the pumping station had to wait till the pumps were turned off before they could escape the clutches of the current. But nothing ever seems to be as it seems on the BCN. Today, if you go down to the Ocker Hill branch, you'll find there are residential moorings and a wharf at the bottom. And this was where the water intake came in, but that was only phase 2. The first attempt at this involved a tunnel that came in directly from the Walsall Canal. But as with everything else, it became undermined and it sank and it became inoperable. So the new branch was dug. I suppose the old tunnel is somewhere still underwater down there. Not that I have any idea of how you might find any remains. But with the reduced volume of trade on the BCN, the need for all this expensively pumped water abated. And so in the end, the pumping station was decommissioned. and the structure has long gone and been turned into housing. But one of the original relief engines, which had been brought in from the Smethwick pumping station, has survived. In fact, it's one of the original Bolton and Watt beam engines built in 1779. It's been saved and it still operates in steam at Millennium Point Science Museum in Birmingham. And it's said to be the oldest operating steam engine in the world. If you want to see a bit more about the pumping engines, have a look at my video, The Beast of Sandfields, which includes a very similar pumping engine. Well, we've hung around at Ocker Hill long enough and it really is time to move on. But before we do, we're going to be passing the eastern end of the Thame Valley Canal. That was the late build canal, which was made as a bypass to avoid the congestion at factory locks. It's the canal that includes the Perry Bar flight of locks, which we spent time looking at in Series 4. And because I don't know when we're going to be passing this way again, I'm going to include a flyby just to let you see what this canal looks like from here as far as Rushall Junction, or Newton Junction as it used to be known. You'll see just how amazingly straight it is, built on embankments and cuttings, very, very similar to the Shropshire Union. In fact, it looks distinctly like a railway embankment running across the landscape. The Thame Valley Canal was built to provide an extra commercial route into the Black Country. So if we're viewing the Thame Valley, we also have to take a look at the Toll End Communication Canal, which runs west almost directly opposite its junction into the Walsall Canal. And that's where we're going to go next. We'll start with a flyby up the route of the old Toll End Canal and then follow it up with a photo stream of archive photo images showing you what this archaic canal used to look like, both when it existed and during its phases of dereliction. Well, I hope you enjoyed that photo stream of the Toll End Communication Canal. From here we're going to move our boats just a few hundred yards south down the Walsall Canal, and at that point we'll reach the foot of the Ryders Green locks and we make that right turn into the Haynes Branch. Well, opposite the interchange basin there is the entrance to the 3/4 mile Haynes Branch, built in 1833 to access the collieries and the pump house brickworks. And the idea was then to tackle a 1 in 24 incline up a 1,200 foot incline plane, which would take the canal and the boats up 45 feet to the Birmingham new main line above. This route offered a relatively gentle gradient, which would allow that end-on approach to the incline and would have terminated in the short Dunkirk branch, and then to enter the new main line just opposite the Gower branch. That's where we're leaving this episode. The boats have completed the proposed incline plane route, and in doing so they've saved a couple of hours of locking, and they've saved a couple of lockfuls of water, which can't be bad. But that isn't the end of our journey, because the load of coal we've got on board is actually destined for another pumping station, this time at the top of the Oldbury locks. It's going to Tipton Pumping Station. But along the way we're going to have to call in to the boatyard in Oldbury. But that's all for next episode. So for now, it's goodbye. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I will see you soon. Happy hunting. Cheerio.